How you doing, YouTube? Matt with Massive Beer Reviews. Back with yet another review. A little bit of tweener homebrew time in the form of Abomination Brewing's Midnight Snack. I have no idea what this beer is. All I know is this. Abomination Brewing is a brewery that's starting in my area. Josh, the owner of the brewery, the brewer, I've met him a couple times, and I've had a couple of his beers, and they're fun. Yeah, a lot of hoppy stuff. You know, the stuff that I've had is the hoppy stuff that everybody's kind of going whatever over. But I haven't reviewed any of his stuff because, you know, he's just getting the brewery off the ground. Should be open soon, so. But the other day I was with Keith. You all know Keith. You've heard me talk about him in the past. He sends me a lot of other half beers. I was at his place the other day, and he kind of threw this at me. And I guess this is one of Josh's beers that he made, like, almost a year ago. Maybe even a little bit longer than a year ago. And he said, hey, man. He's like, you want this? I was like, hell yeah, dude. I was like, it'd be cool to dive into it. So I have no idea about this beer. Don't know what it is. All I know it's a year old, and it's 10% ABV. That should be a fun ride. And back then, about a year ago, a bit more homebrew style stuff. So that's why I said the whole tweener thing. So anyway, let's see what this sucker has. Like I said, Abomination Brewing. It says Midnight Snack, ABV 10%. Those were on there, I assume, to keep the glue in place, but it's pretty solid. I actually love that fucking label. It's just a thin piece of balsa wood with the name of the brewery kind of stamped into it with the name of the beer and then the ABV on it, but I actually really like the label. It's one of my favorite labels I've seen in a long time. And I'm not just saying that. Because it sucked, I'll say it sucks. So, yeah. Let's see, 10% homebrew. Let's see how that goes. Oh, look, didn't fly out. So we know it's not infected, so that's nice. Okay, so we're probably dealing with a stout here. Let's get a little aggressive on the pour. See how she settles in there headwise. Not too bad. Actually has a nice cascading effect at the end there. That's pretty fucking solid stuff. You know, at home brewers that are this old, you know, sometimes you can get a little bit, okay, it's going to pop in my face, but then you go to the opposite end of the spectrum, you're like, uh-oh, there's no carbonation to it whatsoever. It actually looks pretty damn nice. Nice malted malt ball colored head, leaning towards how I like my coffee to look, colored head, super tight compact bubbles. Creaminess throughout, looks like chocolate milk, and it should be dark. So we're definitely leaning Imperial Stout here. What does it have in it besides malt? In carbonation at this point, because we can't tell. We don't know. Let's see what the nose gives us a little insight. Well, it smells like an Imperial Stout, but it does smell like it has a little bit of booziness to it. Again, it's a year old. It could be a big, huge ABV stout, which could make you think a little bit of bourbon vibes, because you can get that a lot from these bigger ABV, kind of your Black Alberts of the world, your Russian Imperial Stouts. Sometimes can impart a bit of kind of bourbon-y kind of vibes to it. But what I get, big, thick, malty sweetness. Not much bitterness there. It's a year old, so that's kind of be expected. Not much hop presence there. There's a nice sweet creaminess to it, almost lactose in vibes. But again, I don't think that's the case. I think it's just a bit of age and roundness and big ABV kind of propping it up. But if you told me, again, homebrew style, that this didn't hit maybe some bourboned vanilla bean, or maybe even just like bourbon soaked cubes or staves or something like that, I could definitely see that based off the nose. But yeah, we're dealing with stout, we're dealing with the sweetness, we're dealing with maybe a little bit of spirit, maybe a little bit of vanilla bean. That's my take as of the moment. So let's just dive in, see what you taste like. Cheers. Okay. Well, I have no idea what originally went in this beer, but I'm going to say what I said about the nose, about the bourbon vanilla bean thing, maybe some cubes involved too. I think all that's in there. I think this is an Imperial Stout with some kind of vanilla factor to it. I don't think it's lactose. I think it's vanilla bean. And I think there is a spirit-soaked wood involved. Why do I think that? Well, first off, it's a year old, so all that stuff not all that stuff, but it has a roundness to it, but it also has this kind of extra sweetness to it. I don't think comes from the base malt. It has a nice mouthfeel to it. It's definitely in the stout realm. The carbonation's okay, nothing too crazy, but it's a year old. But you're dealt with this kind of slightly oxidized kind of. It's not a smoky wood. It's more of kind of like a musty woodiness. I'm assuming that's the cubes. I've had homebrews before that have kind of used these cubes, and sometimes they tend to be used a couple times. Even though you soak them in spirit, you end up getting a little bit of mustiness off it. But it could be an actual oxidation issue. There's a bit of rust up here. We don't know. And it is a homebrew seal on it. There's a dent on the inside of there, so you know it's kind of the old school capper. But I get a little bit of like a little bit of a musty tannin to it. I think that's a woody thing, and I feel like there's a bit of bourbon, a bit of spirit going on in there. Maybe not even bourbon. It could be just like a whiskey. But there's this vanilla thing that could come from wood too. So it could just be a fresh wood with a kind of bourbon soaked vanilla bean. That could be it too. Or it could just be fresh wood in some kind of bourbon cube. Or it could be just a base beer. But my gut's telling me we're dealing with a vanilla stout, stout with some kind of vanilla component. I'm thinking kind of, vanilla beaniness and some kind of spirit infusion. And it's tasty. A year old. There's really not much negative to it other than that little bit of mustiness. But honestly, that shit don't bother me all that much because I like kind of aged old beers. And yeah, it's tasty. If you could somehow bump up that carbonation, I think it would be a little bit more approachable. But at the same time, it's tasty stuff. The first dark beer I've had from Josh. And honestly, you're talking about someone that's getting a brewery up and running or trying to. So you're talking about somebody that technically is still living kind of in that pseudo homebrew world. A year ago, you're kind of talking about when he really started kind of wanting to kind of open a brewery. So you're definitely in that knee-deep, very kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of hopeful, positive, and aggressive kind of homebrew mode. So, but you're still in the homebrew mode. So this is definitely one of the better homebrew stouts I've had in a while. And even with it being a year old, it's pretty good stuff. So yeah, this is the point of the show where I typically go and talk about value and availability and what do I think and stuff. But I don't do that with homebrews. So we're just gonna skip all that and just say what about Abomination. The beers I've had from Josh have been pretty fun. A lot of stuff I had have been a little bit sticky stuff. Kind of cereal-based kind of IPAs and then stuff like that. And they've been tasty. Nothing kind of out of left field, kind of negative-wise as far as like, you know what I mean, negative flavors or off flavors or anything like that. But they've been pretty fun beers. And the dude's super positive, super nice. Definitely has a passion for beer. So yeah, what does it say? It says that he's opening a brewery soon. Hopefully he should be up sometime next year. I believe he's going to be in the Allentown area of Pennsylvania. So when they open, if he's making stuff like this and the stuff that I had, it's definitely worth a visit. I mean, when he does open, he starts doing beers like that, I'm sure we will kind of grab some of his stuff and be a little bit more kind of, I don't want to say a bit more professional about it because I'll never be that way, but be a little bit more kind of brewery forward, do the whole kind of massive beer review sticky thing instead of the whole homebrew end of things. But yeah, tasty stuff. And if this is what he's making then to the stuff that I've had now, things should be good. There you go. Another review in the books. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you didn't, anywhere in between down there, words and stuff and things. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Untapped, Massive Beers, all four of those places if you want to check this dude out somewhere else. And there you go. Another review down. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Hopefully enjoying a nice aged homebrew right now. And hope to see you next time. Cheers.